Hi, I'm Ross. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with BrandNudge, and I wanted to talk to you about AI and data within grocery retail. Firstly, who are BrandNudge? So BrandNudge are a retail data and analytics platform for FMCG and CPG brands and retailers. And what we do, in short, is we gather millions of unstructured data points from retailers right across the UK and around the world every single day. And we bring that into our ecosystem and we cleanse and enrich that data using data science and AI methodologies. We then use that rich, granular data to produce a number of software platforms, such as our digital shelf platform, which helps brands maximize their e-commerce sales, and our pricing and promotions platform to help strategic revenue managers and revenue growth managers to optimize their trade spend. Furthermore, we also provide FMCG manufacturers with reviews and sentiment analysis, ingredient tracking to help identify shrinkflation and skimpflation, and equally direct data feeds into the data lakes of some of the biggest FMCG manufacturers in the world. I wanted to talk to you about AI and data for one particular reason, and that is not only is AI at the center of the conversation, both in the industry as a whole, but in the world in general. And I say that because I feel like I know more about what Elon Musk is doing at the moment than I know about what members of my own family are doing. But equally, Forbes magazine has identified that the grocery industry is ripe for AI transformation for three reasons. Firstly, the mass scale of the industry. Secondly, the razor fine margins involved, particularly in the large scale retailers, where we're talking about typically low single digit margins, which mean the marginal gains that can be obtained from implementing AI and automation are particularly attractive and can be transformational. And finally, the large-scale budgets and resources of the players involved. Huge retailers and blue-chip manufacturers have got specific budgets to invest in test and learn programs and AI adoption. Accenture have identified that truly implementing AI within the industry could unlock £56 billion worth of cost savings and revenue opportunities. So it's a huge initiative to get behind. So the data giant Oracle have identified that AI can transform the grocery sector in 6 key ways. Firstly, through quality control, identifying substandard produce at source and at scale through automation and image recognition can be transformational in labor savings. Secondly, pricing, the ability to target using mass scale data analysis, specific customer pricing and promotions to customers based on their needs and circumstances can be highly beneficial in driving conversion. But equally, a stat which blew my mind, almost a third of all food production ends up as waste. And what AI allows manufacturers and retailers to do is to look at things like dynamic pricing, where prices are reduced closer to the end of the shelf life of a particular fresh product. Thirdly, inventory management. Huge scale AI powered data analysis allows more accurate forecasting, but equally allows retailers to identify the key areas of the store that require replenishment. Thirdly, shrinkage. So image recognition technology could identify repeat offenders into the store and save the need for those posters of the store and the repeat offenders at the entrance to the store. Personalization is probably one of the key focuses for AI implementation, both for retailers and brands, and we'll touch on that in a second. And finally, the in-store shopping experience can be transformed through AI. So I think we'll have all seen some of the test and learn examples that Amazon have done where you can purchase your shopping simply by picking it off the shelf and walking out of the store, and the camera recognition system will invoice you for that shopping. This is just a particular example from a US grocer called Albertsons who, through their BWS site, Vine and Cellar, have implemented a partnership with an AI provider to power a curated wine selection for customers. And the customer will input their selections of their particular wine preferences, and they will then select the type of, whether they were interested more in red or white wine, the flavor profiles, do they enjoy full-bodied or more light-bodied, do they like fruitier or drier styles, and through this process of extracting customer feedback, the retailer is then able to present the curated range of the products that they sell that will be relevant and appealing to that customer. This transforms shopper conversion in an area that's traditionally got quite a high barrier to entry because of the complexities involved. So ultimately, as with any new technology, what we are now facing is a race for adoption and implementation. And those currently leading the race are those bigger retailers who've been working on this for quite some time. So you've got leaders like Amazon and Walmart who are at the forefront of implementing AI technology. But we're also starting to see the big blue chip manufacturers really catch up. And you've got people like Unilever who've actually developed a Lynx product using AI to define the particular scent. And equally, you've got people like Kraft Heinz who are using the online recipe information and equally social media mentions to assimilate large-scale data for the analysis for MPD development. But what that ultimately could result in is, because of the high barrier to entry and the cost of implementing AI, we may end up with an imbalance where we're left with smaller FMCG manufacturers being left much closer to the start line, or even not actually beginning on their FMCG journey. I wanted to share a different perspective, which is that actually I believe that AI can actually help to level that playing field and can provide access for smaller manufacturers to data and insights that have typically been out of reach through having higher costs to entry. And as a result, AI can democratize access to real insight and research. And I'm going to show you some practical ways that we're going to do that. So for the purposes of this, I'd like you to imagine that we were all working for the very imaginatively named Ross's Ready Meals, and we are a supplier within the really interesting and trend-led ready meals business. And to demonstrate the power of AI for a small manufacturer, we're going to focus on the range review process, because this is probably the single biggest impact on a manufacturer's business that can be had. And so we've broken the range review process down into 4 stages, the first of which being innovation. So what MPD are we going to launch into the market to compete? Secondly is the analysis phase. What's our opportunity with a particular retailer and within a certain category? Thirdly is the negotiation stage. So how am I going to go and get that away with my retailer? How am I going to engage my buyer to get the product listed in as many stores as possible? And finally, once the range review has been implemented, how can I analyze the payback and how can I look at the next iteration of my product range, my retailer partnership? We'll start by focusing on the MPD side. An MPD was traditionally a process which was quite expensive to get off the starting blocks, and almost 80% of FMCG MPD launches fail. And typically, one of the most common reasons is the early research and development stage wasn't conducted thoroughly enough. And so many FMCG manufacturers will start by doing things like having a food safari, understanding food trends and what trends are being replicated out of home. So typically you'll see restaurant trends land well ahead of when customers are then ready to try those products in home. So you might do a food safari to London, or even going further afield to look at restaurant menus and the type of cuisines that customers are interacting with. You might then commission a usage and attitude survey, working with a third-party marketing agency to pull together a really thorough, in-depth piece of analysis about how customers are interacting with a category and key challenges or opportunities that they see within the area. And finally, you might then take some concepts to a focus group to really get customers' individual opinions about what's happening within the category. Now, these are all really useful tools, but the problem is they're quite expensive, and that can be a barrier for smaller manufacturers being able to utilize these routes to market. So for your typical food safari, by the time you've included all your expenses in a guide, you're looking at around £4,000. A typical usage and attitude survey for a mid to large size category is upwards of £20,000. And for a focus group, even for a small or mid-sized category, including a moderator and a venue and the participants, you can be looking at £5,000 plus. So before we've even begun developing any products, we've spent £30,000. That's a really high barrier to a small independent manufacturer or an SME to be able to spend this kind of money to do full due diligence on their MPD. I'm going to show you how we can use AI and data that's readily available to start bringing some of those costs down. So firstly, if we want to understand what customers are thinking and how they're feeling about certain trends, let's go to where the customer goes to find that information. Customers will use Google. So if I'm at home and I want to start making some food from a particular country, I'm going to look for recipe ideas. So I might search for Korean recipes or Turkish recipes or Middle Eastern recipes. So what we've done is we've taken some of the key cuisines as a result of the Google search trend data for those search terms, and we've then started to chart how that changes over time. So over the last 5 years, we can see how the main 4 cuisines are typically remaining unchanged. You've got Italian, Chinese, Thai, and Indian. And way out in front, you've got vegan recipes as the most popular customer search. But what this allows us to do is for some of the more emerging cuisines, things like Moroccan, Turkish, Korean, and Japanese, we can see the interplay between these. When do they gain customer traction? When do they become more at the forefront of customers' minds? And possibly when do they become ready for then adoption into in-home and ready for our ready meals range to be developed? So Google search trend data is a great source of understanding where customers' mindset is and when things are ready for adoption into an MPD development cycle. So that potentially has saved us £4,000 just by using data that's readily available and helps us to understand where the customer mindset is. Second, if we want to avoid spending £20,000 on a usage and attitude survey, we need access to research that's been done on the category, really credible sources that tell us what's going on. This will be the first and only time in a presentation about AI that I suggest using ChatGPT, and I make no apology for doing that, but this allows smaller manufacturers with smaller budgets to access really credible pieces of research that have been done. I'm not suggesting taking the answer ChatGPT gives you and running with it. It's a great starting point to then go and just validate that research with additional sources. But as an example, I asked ChatGPT, so using statistical analysis, predict the 3 biggest new flavours for a UK chilled ready meal by 2026. And just a little tip, I've also asked it to include statistics and evidence in the answer. That will make it more specific and will give me more credibility and a more useful output. So ChatGPT then comes back and it suggests the methodology it's going to take. So we can see step 1 is identifying current flavour trends. And so what we can then start to see is within the answer, we've got key consumer trends and actually credible sources being referenced, with Mintel of 40% of customers seeking more international flavours and a 15% year-on-year growth in spicy flavours. So you're getting really credible nuggets of information. Equally, Korean dishes have seen a 25% increase in searches year-on-year from consumers. So it's starting to drip feed those really credible statistical evidence points that you can use and then translate that into your MPD cycle. And then thirdly, it then starts to actually suggest specific flavors. So Korean flavors with gochujang and kimchi, Mexican flavors with chipotle and jerk as a result of a growth in chipotle searches, and plant-based and fermented flavors with miso and turmeric being particularly at the forefront of customers' minds. So ultimately, we then get presented with the 3 suggested flavors. So Korean inspired, Mexican, and plant-based. Like I say, you wouldn't necessarily just run with that straight away and develop a Korean ready meal, but you can then use this to go and validate that with some additional research. But it's a great starting point, and things like Mintel reports are typically quite high cost for a manufacturer to acquire. And so the ability to use some of those data points that have been publicly available is really useful for a manufacturer and could save us as much as £20,000 in not having to commission a U&A survey. Thirdly, and finally, focus groups. There are currently 22 million ratings and reviews from customers on UK grocery sites alone. That's 22 million customer comments about categories, citing the benefits, the opportunities, and any problems encountered in those categories. That is free quantitative data, and that can be used effectively as a large-scale focus group to inform your research. So what I did was I took all of the ratings and reviews from the Asian ready meals category to validate what we're potentially looking at for a Korean ready meal and the pitfalls that we need to avoid if we're to make a successful product launch. So firstly, poor flavour and taste accounted for 28% of the customer reviews. Poor texture and incorrect cooking instructions was 24%. Small portion size or poor value for money was an additional 18%. And finally, misleading product descriptions was 14%. These are the 4 biggest problems within the ready meals category that customers buying a product that I'm looking to develop have already told me I need to avoid. So these are areas that we need to ensure we design out of our process. Within any one of these, you can then drill down further using the large language model to identify that within poor taste and flavour, for example, the common problems are it being too bland, it being too spicy or over-seasoned, or finally too sweet. Using this instead of a focus group has saved us an additional 5k. Again, AI and data can perform really strong data analysis and provide you with excellent insights at a fraction of the cost of having to commission primary research. If we move on to the opportunity and the analysis proportion of the range review, the fact that so much commerce has moved into the e-commerce and online channels has brought with it a proliferation of readily available data sets. As an example, To perform a gap analysis historically, even going back 10 years ago, it would have probably meant commissioning a third-party agency to go and visit a selection of stores and physically gather data at quite a high cost. At the touch of a button, we have this data available to us instantly through online data collection. So what we can see is this is the current range of Korean ready meals in the UK market. And by retailer, we can see where these are listed to identify the current listings. And then more importantly for us, the areas where these are not currently listed and where there might be a real opportunity for us to land our Korean ready meal into some white space. What we can see is there's currently a 21% range coverage within Korean ready meals, suggesting that the market is ripe for new entrants into that and new listings. Secondly, the advent of e-commerce has meant that total category pricing and promotions data is more readily available than ever before. So again, what I've taken is the total fresh Asian ready meals category, and I've plotted every single product within there on a pricing grid, which allows us to then see how the category shapes up from a pricing and promotional perspective. And it allows me to identify the specific pricing corridors that are really well catered for within the category already. So we can see a significant concentration of products at £2.50, £3, £3.50, £3.75, £4.25 and £5. Anywhere where there's a concentration of products means that that area is really well served by the existing range. This allows me to identify possible areas of pricing white space where I may want to launch a product in because it's going to add something incremental to the category and address a customer need that's currently not being met. So there's a really good opportunity to land a product between £4.25 and £5 as a result of this analysis. This data is more readily available than ever before and should definitely be used as part of your NPD development process. Moving on to the negotiation stage, I currently believe that manufacturers are not making the most of the proliferation of data sets that are available to create a more compelling story in discussions with buyers. Having spent 8 years running buying teams myself for Asda, I've tried to put a lens over it of what would engage me as a buyer and how could I potentially look at achieving a greater result for my business, for Ross's Ready Meals, and get a product listed into more stores. What that means is I need to create a compelling story about how I'm backing the retailer's strategy in a number of key areas. Firstly, within pricing. I want to be able to show that I'm giving the retailer that I'm discussing the product launch with a more compelling value proposition than their competitors, but equally that I'm offering them a greater pricing investment than my competitors within the category. So showing the retailer how their product stacks up as price read across in terms of the category as a whole or my products within it is really beneficial to show that I'm investing and backing a particular retailer. Secondly, I want to show how I'm delivering against the promo strategy for them and providing a really compelling offer. So how do my weeks on deal differ versus the category average and versus my competitors? And equally, how does my promotional discount and the attractive nature of the deal compare to my competitors? Thirdly, especially if there's a high inflation within a category, ideally I want to be able to show and evidence that I'm inflating at a rate slower than the total category. I'm helping the retailer to manage their competitive offer for their customers. So I'm not coming to them with unreasonable cost price increases. And ideally, if I can use my pricing and promotions data to show that either versus key competitors or versus category average, I'm passing across lower inflation levels than the category as a whole. It makes me a more compelling long-term partner for the retailer. Fourthly, and this is a really big opportunity that I believe many manufacturers are missing, I want to be able to show the retailer that my products achieve on average a higher customer rating than my competitor set and than their category average as a whole. This is particularly useful if you're trying to pitch for new private label business from the retailers. Retailers are obviously very concerned with the credibility and the quality of their private label products. And if I can show that my products on average, where I produce private label products for other retailers, achieve higher ratings and reviews than competitors, that means I'm a more trusted custodian of their brand than potentially other manufacturers who might be pitching as part of the same own label tender. Use the ratings and reviews data that's really readily available to provide a compelling story for your brand and to engage the retailer. Thirdly, we've already shown how AI and data adoption can mean that you can reference customer need really easily and cost effectively to show that there's a requirement for your product in the category. And finally, retail media is a huge dynamic within the industry currently. And I want to be able to show that I'm currently investing in retail media with the particular retailer, and I want to be able to show that I have a stronger share of that retail media than my competitor set. And equally, I have a really good understanding of my media ROI, and I can evidence that not only is the media delivering for me as a manufacturer, but my retail media investment is helping to grow the total category. These are some really key leverage data points that can help me engage the retailer in a more productive conversation and increase the chances of successfully landing my product listing. And why are we doing that? Because effectively, for every 100 additional stores that I can get my product into, at a rate of 4 units per store per week that we would predict it would sell, and at the base price that we've identified of £4.75, that would suggest that I can obtain an extra 100k per year of revenue with that retailer alone. So the ability to create a really compelling story which helps you to unlock deeper distribution and a more productive conversation with the retailer ultimately has a really strong correlation to the bottom line delivery for that product. Finally, I wanted to touch on how AI can transform the way that we analyze a range review post-implementation. The way it can do that is image recognition technology can transform how effectively and efficiently we can analyze planograms to understand shifts in the category within a certain retailer. So we can assimilate hundreds of modular images from across different geographies, different demographics, and equally different modular sizes. And we can really quickly, using image recognition and computer vision technology, analyze the changes of that to quantify that into empirical data that we can then play back with the retailer. Quick example of this would be understanding the percentage of space within a modular option that's being given over to certain formats, meal occasions, or product groupings. So as a result, we've got take-home pizza, and in this example, it's being given 24% of the space within a 4-bay modular option. We can then see that chilled ready meals is being given 32.7% of the space within the 4-bay option. We can then compare that to the 5-bay option, whereby take-at-home pizza is still being given relatively the same space of 1 bay, 1 full bay, but that across the 5-bay option is meaning actually a decrease in linear percentage share of shelf. Chilled ready meals, on the other hand, significantly increases by a factor of almost 2 to take nearly 3 full bays of product. So using AI and computer vision can really easily help you and save time in analyzing the effects of a particular change within a range change. Moreover, we can then start to dig into a deeper level of detail and pick out specific brands' share of shelf. So we can see across the brands in the category, the percentage share of shelf that they occupy within the 4-bay, and then how that translates across the different bay options in the 5-bay. And obviously you would have convenience formats, larger store formats, and regional variations within this to analyze. And again, what we can see here is actually the share of shelf for the branded products remains largely the same, as in wasabi still occupies a full shelf in the 5-bay as it does in the 4-bay. But what we see is Sainsbury's mid-tier private label is by far and away the biggest gainer of share of shelf, going from 27% to nearly 47% of share of shelf in the 5-bay option. This is just a really quick example of how using AI and computer image technology can allow you to analyze at scale planograms from across the country and from different retailers to mark the effects of retail range reviews. So I wanted to leave you with one thought, which was that traditionally, because a lot of the data points within FMCG were held by large scale players, the cost of acquiring that data was traditionally quite high. And equally, the ability to analyze and assimilate that data into actionable insights was quite complex and quite manual work. And so that had a high effort and complexity level. So traditionally, the ability to get insights would sit in high cost, high complexity and effort model. With the proliferation of e-commerce channels, that brings more readily available data than ever before within the industry. And it's lowered the cost of a lot of that data. So it's very low cost to acquire customer ratings and reviews or full category price and promo data, for example. So we've reduced the cost of acquiring data within the industry. And then equally, data and AI has enabled us to analyze that data at scale and to translate large scale unstructured data into actionable data points. So effectively, that's also reduced the effort and complexity, meaning that our insights window has now shifted into a much lower cost, lower complexity and effort quadrant. Ultimately, in this presentation alone, we've shown how data and AI could hypothetically save over £130,000. That's a huge difference for a small manufacturer. And so is a question mark of how you can adopt AI in whatever scale or whatever level of complexity within your business to increase efficiencies and improve profit margins. Thanks. Hope that was helpful.